Rightio, you bunch of legends. Today we are doing a Outback Tourer awning install video. Now apparently my paper instructions weren't good enough, so we thought we'd do a video for it. Maybe it's because I'm dyslexic and I wrote them, but anyway, we'll get into it. So first things first, what we're going to need some scissors or a knife. I'm going to need a rag just to wipe the anti-seize off. Or to the mount to a rack, which we'll go over in a sec. That's all inside. Then you'll just need a 13mm spanner and a shifter, and of course anti-seize, stainless bolts, so we'll go over that as well soon. And yeah, without further ado, we'll rip this open and show you what's inside. All right, so inside the box, we've got our little light cable bag. I'll explain that once we get it fitted on the car. We've got our awning brackets, which we explained before. I'll pull those out. We've got a patch kit with the glue, so if you ever do rip your awning or your awning bag, you just put that on and glue it. So that's good to know that you've got that. Keep that in your glove box. You've got the awning instructions that I explained before, so that shows how to put the bracket together. It also has a please watch QR code on the back that it's like a video that shows you how to pack the awning up properly, so give that a watch as well. And then last but not least, we've got our accessory bag here, and inside that, open that up, so we've got some pegs. So these are they're for grass, so if you are on the beach you're going to want to get some sand pegs, but these are good enough if you're on the grass, so they're handy to have. You've got a whole bunch of ropes, which is cool, a couple of little spare end caps for the awning arms. These here I'll explain soon. A couple of Allen keys to check all your hinges are tight, and then your bag of bolts. Now I'll open this up, tip all these out so we can have a bit of a chat about what all these bolts are, where they go and what situation. What I will say is it's important not to mix these bolts up with any bolts you've gotten with your rooftop tent, if you do have a rooftop tent, or if you've gotten the tent awning brackets to bolt on the side of the tent, they'll have their own bolts with them, so you don't want to go mixing them up, and I'll explain why. Step one, after we've opened everything, would be to assemble these awning brackets. Now these awning brackets are very strong. They're a stainless steel bracket, and the cool thing about them is they're modular, so you can actually put them at any height you want and set the height, so very versatile for every sort of setup. Now if you're putting it on a platform, we'll jump up in a sec and explain how to mount them to a platform. That all works. There's heaps of different holes here. If you've got a base rack, you might need some T-slot adapters, but just reach out, we'll point you in the right direction. They work for crossbars. If you want them lower, higher, pretty much anything you want, you can mount them upside down. It really doesn't matter. Super versatile. Now, just for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to put them at this height. That's a pretty standardized height. And in your bolt kit here, we've got a series of bolts, and now the ones you're going to want to be using to put the awning bracket together, they're these little short ones. They're roughly about 20mm by the looks of it. So we've got 3 different sizes. So that's your 3 different sizes there. Now the short ones are to bolt the awning bracket together, the middle ones go in the back of the awning, and these long ones are for bolting to your roof racks or something like that. Now to bolt these awning brackets together, we don't need to use a washer on these. We'll save the washers for the back of the awning, but essentially bolts go in like that, nylock goes on like so. Then I just like to do them one by one before tightening, that way they all tighten up square. Now I'm just demonstrating here. I'm not fully going to do them up because we're actually mounting to a tent, but it is very important we do put anti-seize on all of these before tightening them up, because stainless on stainless, it can bind. Once they do bind, you're going to have a hell of a time trying to get them out. So this is $10 from super cheap. You can get it from any hardware, doesn't matter what brand, just some sort of like zinc paste, or this one's a copper base, but anti-seize is your friend. If you don't have any and you're in a rush, a bit of WD-40 or silicone spray can also work. Just make sure you spray a bit more on before you take them off. So that's my 4 bolts. Now we're just up on this rhino rack. We aren't actually fitting to this one today, but there's a good opportunity opportunity to show you guys how this works with the Rhino rack. Now we're going on the tent, but we'll go through this anyway. So the awnings, they come with a bolt kit which has a couple of these bad boys in them. So this is, I think, like a 4th generation Rhino rack. If you have the 6th generation, they've got all their own hardware now. They've made it quite difficult for us to adapt. I guess they wanted to only supply hardware for their racks, which I understand, but there is a way around it. I believe you can actually pull this corner piece off on the V6s and still get these into the side, which is nice. Otherwise, just head down to your local Rhino rack dealer and they'll be able to sort you out with some fittings. These ones, for this demo, they just slide in there like that, and then the awning bracket goes over the top. So that's what we'd be doing. We'd be sitting it over like so, and then drop the nut and washer on there, tighten that up. So these brackets here, you need the rear bracket, because all the weight from the awning is at the back of the awning. That's where that big hinge section is. So you want this first bracket within 300 millimeters of the back of the awning. So I'll say that again, this bracket within 300 millimeters of, say that's your awning, the back of it, within the back of the awning. And then we need a minimum of 1200 spacing. You can probably go back to around 1100 if you have a 180 awning. It's not quite as heavy, but 1200 is optimal. And the further you can get it, the stronger it's going to be, because you also have a hinge at the front. So 1200 minimum from that back bracket, within 300 at the back. And then if you can get further, even better. Okay, next step will be to put the awning brackets either on the back of the awning and lift up to the car. That's one way of doing it. So connect that on there and then lift it up and tighten it on your roof rack. In this situation, we've already got the awning brackets on the tent, so we'll be doing it the other way, which is putting these bolts in and lifting it up onto the tent. Now for these awning brackets, this is the back of our awning, and what I was explaining before is we want this bracket within 300 mil of the back of this plate. So pretty much the furthest you can put it here, being on this side of our nice bolts here, is about 300. Now, if you have to go here, it's not the end of the world. Like, I'm just explaining what is best for the awning. If you do have it here, it will be fine. It's just not going to be as strong as putting it there. It'll still be super strong, like it's a really rigid back plate, but this is ideal. You see the photos of me hanging off them online to do that. Not that I encourage you to do it, but that's where that needs to be. That's the strongest point. Back here, you'll get a little bit of movement, but it's still going to be sweet. Now, to bolt these, you see we've got heaps of keyways in the back here. This is a nice feature of our awnings, and we've got like a plate over the top. For these keyways here, we'll put so you put your bolts in like that. Now, the reason I said not to mix the bolts up is because the back of this will take either a 13 or a 14, but we need to put a 14 in the back. With your awning brackets, for example, for the tent, they come with 13 mil head. So 13 mil head is great for the tent, but not great for the back of the awning. If you put it in, it can spin in there. There's a lot of movement. You need the 14 mil head ones. So if we don't mix any bolts up, it's never going to happen. But I'm just explaining it because we have had a couple of emails in the past where people have gone to tighten them up and it's spun in there. So make sure we've got the 14 mil heads in there only. That awning bracket. So for this one, we recommend putting the 4 bolts on like that. So 4 bolts through, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can get a whole bunch of adjustment out of that bracket. So even though you've set the height, you still have 2 locations you can put that awning bracket. So that's how that works. Now, if you've got a rooftop tent, you're only going to get 2 bolts in, but that is fine because we're going to have an extra bracket compared to just mounting to the cab. And that's how the rooftop tent one will work, which is what we'll be doing on Christian's car behind me. So 1 bracket there, and then if you have a rooftop, like we've explained in the rooftop videos, we'll essentially have another bracket about there, and then 1 up the front. If you had the other bracket, like I said before, within 300 of the back, and then measure 1200 along, or whatever your roof rack is. The only other thing to mention here is this back plate. I'm only mentioning it because we've had a couple of questions. You don't have to necessarily mount the front or the back bracket on that back plate. You can mount it here or here, for example. You don't have to put the awning bracket over that plate, and you definitely don't have to remove that plate. That plate stays there. That's the bracing plate for the back of that hinge on the inside. So make sure you leave that fully assembled and either go on either side of it, and don't go touching these screws. You're fine to check if they're tight. They always should be, but good to, that's a maintenance point, I suppose. But yeah, no need to touch those. Now the last way we've allowed for these brackets to mount, if you have one of those old school like mesh racks that have been around for ages, you can put bolts through like this and then put this clamp underneath, and you can actually clamp around the mesh. That'd pretty much just go up like that. So we've got 4 plates in there. That'll clamp around one of those old school sort of mesh racks that you've probably seen. Last thing I mentioned on this backing plate, you'll notice that this is about a washer height different to the backing plate. So if we've got one bracket mounted here and then one here or here, because it's such a small distance, it's really not going to matter the height discrepancy. It's over a pretty big span. If it is something that you're concerned about, if you want to, what I'm trying to explain is if this is going to be slightly a different height because there's no plate here, what you can easily do to bring it back to the same height, just throw 2 washers over the top and then mount it, and that'll get you that same gap as what's down there. Like essentially it doesn't matter, it's over such a big span, you're never going to pick like 1.2 mil over that span, but if you were a bit picky with it, then you can just easily throw a washer there and it'll bring it back to the same height. We've got the old awning off Christian's car here. We're swapping it over for one of the shows. I thought it'd be a good opportunity to show you a couple of the little updates we've had just on the backing plate. Now this is the old awning and the new awning. This hinge system now cantilevers the whole way back across the backing plate, so it disperses all that weight this whole way through, as opposed to just this section here. We've also added all these keyways in to make it easier. Instead of having to slide all your bolts up from one end, there are just keyways in the back here as well. Now if you're a small competitor and you're thinking about copying this one, don't you dare, because we've got all the design registration on this one, so you'll find out. Same up this end, all the same keyways at the front. So compared to this little hinge system that we used to have, we've got all these keyways and then this plate here to help hold that weight and distribute it once the awning's out. The awning is also about 25% smaller as well, so it might be a bit hard to pick up on camera, but this was the older awning, so we're quite wide, but we've trimmed this one right back and gotten it stronger, so lighter, stronger, thinner, all round better product. Now we'll set the camera up over there and then lift this bad boy up onto the car and open it up. So that's all mounted up. Next step, we'll put these little fasties on with the hooks and make sure we're all good to go. But that was pretty easy. Like, to be honest, that took us about maybe like 45 minutes to an hour. Wasn't very long. It was, yeah, pretty easy on this setup. So open that up, get our protective foam out, unstrap. So back comes out first. Make sure we pull that over the top. Oh God, this car is very high. Didn't have to use this step. Bring this side around. Now for this instance, we just put it on the shower bracket here, but you could choose on your car where you're gonna pull that back to, put an eyelet in the tent, maybe. Heaps of different ways you could do it, but that's just the way we do it. Tighten that up. It's about 90 degrees, and then we'll do the same on the front. All right, this one here, as you would have seen in our walkthrough video, we don't recommend tying it back to the bull bar. It's not the end of the world, but it is nicer to pull it back on an even plane, which is why we choose to clamp it to our eye bolt up here. Then we can walk back around. Oh, we've hooked the snorkel up there. Walk back around the front of the car and pull that tight. So, there we go. Perfect. That's pretty well it. That's the awning bolted up. We're going to plug all these lights in now, make sure we're all ready to rock and roll, and yeah, that's the awning install done. So as always, thanks for watching. If you've got any questions on this one, hit us up and we'll get back to you.